All right. Welcome, everyone, to the first Conscious Capitalism public virtual gathering of 2021. I really do want to start by saying thank you to everyone who's joining us today from across the country and the world. I'm Alexander McCobin, CEO here at Conscious Capitalism, Inc., and just want to appreciate that you're taking the time to learn and grow in community with us today. We're kicking off the 2021 virtual gathering series with two wonderful conscious capitalists, Matt Altman and Brian Moore, who I want to introduce in a moment. But before I get into that, I want to just explain what we're doing here. As many of you know, conscious capitalism is a philosophy that emphasizes the human nature of capitalism and business. It's a movement of business leaders around the world working to change the practice and perception of capitalism to elevate humanity. And Conscious Capitalism, Inc. is a nonprofit organization dedicated to catalyzing that movement. Every week, we're offering virtual gatherings like this as a way for the community to see how this philosophy takes shape in the leadership journeys and best practices of those who are involved in our network and have been practicing conscious capitalism for years. Today's gathering will run for about 50 minutes, and Brian and Matt are going to be in conversation for about the first 30 minutes, and then we'll transition to audience questions for the rest of the event. So if at any point you have a question, please type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen so that we can add it to the queue. And at any point, if you have any technical questions or issues, just email us at info@consciouscapitalism.org. And with that, it's now my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. We're joined by Matt Altman, the CEO of Sportiq, an American apparel company based in Phoenix, Arizona. He founded Sportiq in 2006, and since then, Sportiq has quickly become a household name among some of the most recognizable brands, athletes, and celebrities in the world after landing a licensing deal with the NBA and being amongst the first apparel companies to bridge the gap between sports fans and the fashion world. Sportiq has outfitted more than 4 million people around the world since its inception, and Matt has a lifelong passion for helping people, supporting them to live their dreams and be the best versions of themselves. And he's joined today and is going to be in conversation with Brian Moore, who has had an amazing career experiences at jobbing.com, P.F. Chang's China Bistro, Y Scouts, Conscious Capitalism Arizona. And today, Brian is channeling his experiences and energy towards unlocking the power of authentic human connection through his new startup, Anthem, a social wellness company focused on helping culture-driven organizations create and nurture meaningful relationships amongst their people to create more value, both for the business and the people. And I, of course, have to say it's an honor to have Brian as a board member here at Conscious Capitalism, Inc. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce to you Brian Moore and Matt Altman. Gentlemen, take it away.
Awesome. Well, Alexander, thank you so much. And to the Conscious Capitalism crew, Happy New Year to everybody. And Matt, my friend, it is great to see you. Who knew that, living roughly 20 minutes away from one another here in the greater Phoenix area, that it would take a virtual Zoom gathering for us to connect in 2021. It's great to see you, my friend. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you too, Brian. It's great to see you. And thank you for your efforts with Conscious Capitalism, and also to Alexander and Abby and Amanda and Michael for their support as well. And I'm excited to see how Conscious Capitalism can continue to evolve and how businesses can literally look to help elevate humanity, period.
Amen, Matt. Amen. Obviously, we are here today to talk about one of the tenets of conscious capitalism, that being stakeholder orientation. But before we jump into that, I think it'd be really, really helpful, in addition to Alexander's description of Sportiq, here we are today, one day removed from what I think was a very special anniversary date of Sportiq, 15 years to the day yesterday, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah.
And if my memory serves, prior to founding Sportiq, you had spent time in the sports world, particularly in merchandising, and you recognized something a gap, a void in what was being made available. And hopefully, I'd love you to share just with the audience quickly, sort of the founding of Sportiq and why you guys exist.
Sure. So Sportiq provides custom, specialized, modern American comfort wear to what I call the destination retail market, which is corporate retail, and that can stem from clients that we have like Nintendo and Trek Bicycle, professional sports with our licensing with the NBA and our work with the NHL, a lot of resorts, music, entertainment. Our first music client in 2006 was the Dave Matthews Band, and they've been a great client to this day. And then we do a lot with like the Grand Ole Opry, things in hospitality, like the Sam Adams Brewery. And then we do a lot in gaming and tech and things of that nature, but all around providing custom apparel for these clients. And it really stemmed from seeing a displaced consumer back in 2004, 2005, where I was the director of merchandise for the Arizona Diamondbacks and Phoenix Suns, where the product at that point was very vanilla, very just a heavyweight boxy t-shirt, slap a logo, loud and proud kind of graphic. And so there was really nothing that spoke to that consumer who maybe shopped at Nordstrom's or Bloomingdale's or a boutique, who wanted a better quality fit and feel in their tee or hoodie or something of that nature. And so really Sportiq is taking boutique inspired fashion trends in terms of fit, fashion, feel, and design element, infusing it with classic sportswear.
Thank you for that, Matt. Really appreciate it. And congrats again on 15 years in a day.
Thank you.
Of a journey that I know is going to last you a long, long time. So congrats, my friend. So let's transition and talk about stakeholder orientation. I think it's probably safe to say that of the 4 tenets of conscious capitalism, stakeholder orientation could be the one that is the most difficult for an organization to wrap their arms around and truly embrace. Why that is could be a variety of reasons. One common reason could be that we've grown up in a world where shareholders, the shareholder primacy theory has ruled, right? And business exists to make a profit, and not nearly enough attention has been paid to the importance of serving the needs, balancing the needs, and creating win-wins amongst the entire ecosystem that a business is so dependent upon in order for it to do what it does and create value. With that being said, something that, you and I have talked about often is this notion that stakeholder orientation really starts from a mindset perspective. And I'm hoping that you could share with the group today how you think about stakeholder orientation and why you have classified it as it begins first with mindset.
Sure. So first, I would say, before I dive into the mindset, is that when you look at the tenets of conscious capitalism, they all have to be at play at the same time. They all have to be working. You can't just have, purpose, but then none of the others, and you can have that conscious leadership, but if you're not pulling that and bringing it into like stakeholder orientation, then it's just not gonna gel and flow properly. So around stakeholder orientation, the mindset for me, I've got like 6 principles that I look at. And the first one, which has been talked about a lot, is just win-win, how to create that win-win between 2 parties. And just for everyone, I look at stakeholder orientation as owners, investors, employees or teammates, customers, of course, key supply chain partners, consultants, and vendors, where you have a relationship. It's not just transactional, but there's a relationship. And so the second key for me in the mindset is approaching those stakeholders with a partnership mentality. So mainly you always think about it with just maybe an owner investor, they're partners, but really like looking at the exec team, looking at your teammates, the people that are fulfilling our orders as partners. And I really look at that they own a piece of the business and they're in charge of a piece of the business. So really having this partnership approach. I think transparency is important in being able to have this mindset. Creating value, having a mindset of how are you creating value back to any of those stakeholders, and how is that reciprocated back to either yourself or to the company. And then the other two I would say is, and we've heard this again before, is having that long-term mindset, thinking long-term, that this is a partner and this is someone that you foresee working with over a period in time, and having a vision of what that looks like. And then the last, which I think is very, very critical, is alignment, and having proper alignment with the stakeholders. And that's, I think the two key things there is vision and values. And so this is where it's really critical, I think, to really understand who you are, and then also the values of that business and how are they being played out day in and day out, so that when you are working with a supply chain partner or a contractor or a consultant, that consultant that you chose is aligned with your vision and values. So when there are those challenging conversations, that you can approach it from that win-win, that you can really approach it from a very humanistic standpoint, instead of a contradictory one, or someone's got to win or else, right? And when it comes to alignment, it gets a little tricky because hopefully the nature of everyone's business is growth, and it's positive growth, and it's changing. So as a business evolves, things may change and will be out of alignment. That consultant that you hired to help you on that project, well, once that project is done and you've evolved, well, maybe now there is an alignment to keep going, and that's okay to, move on.
So let's talk about, you mentioned the word challenges, and undoubtedly over the 15 years that you've been running Sportiq, there have been those. And I think perhaps one of the best ways we can shed some light on how you've really embraced stakeholder orientation is through just a variety of experiences that you've had to test whether or not this is something that you're truly committed to. And I want to start with a story you shared with me with a local decorator here in the greater Phoenix area, and a sudden decision that was made, and your reaction. So I don't want to obviously share all of it, but maybe you can start with that particular story and share the details with the group, and how that particular challenging scenario, how you approached it and how they approached it.
Sure. So we had about already an 8-year relationship with this supply chain partner, and this was a very key supply chain partner, and where they handled our decoration and fulfillment and distribution needs of our product. And we were experiencing growth. We were experiencing 25% year-over-year growth, and the runway looked really good to for us to continue. And all of a sudden, the owner one day just sent a very just firm email, like starting tomorrow, there's going to be 10% price increase. And there were already challenges that were happening, because as we were growing, they were struggling to keep up with capacity. There were some quality control issues that we were having. Things weren't shipping on time. Things that normally would never ship without being checked were shipping, and so there were mistakes that were happening. And they were actually also having a lot of turnover in their business. So all of a sudden, hearing like this 10% price increase, it was a knee-jerk reaction to a lot of things that were happening in the partnership. And so I I understood where it was coming from, but I also knew that wasn't really the answer. Like putting a price increase is actually going to actually make a lot of other things worse, and could not only sever the relationship, but put Sportiq's business at risk to be able to deliver to our customers. So I kind of just put a pause on it and set a meeting with the owner to kind of talk through it. And really what came out of it was to have a full-on stakeholder meeting. So we had 4 people from my side, 4 people from their side, and we spent a half a day doing a SWOT analysis of the relationship and the partnership of what was happening. And through that, their voice got to be heard, our voice got to be heard, both sides got to understand the challenges, because at the end of the day, we both wanted to grow, we both wanted to generate revenue and profit. And so doing that SWOT analysis, it helped us understand each other better, get us a little bit closer to one another. And okay, if a price increase is warranted, here's the best way to do it that has it be sustainable for Sportiq's business, because I can't just, all of a sudden start having a deficit. And I also can't go to our customer in the same way this company did and turn that to ours. So we created a 6-month plan where after 3 months, half of a price increase was done. And then at the end of the 6 months, they ended up getting their full price increase. But then we were able to plan accordingly on our end with our customers, because we already had a lot of orders in the pipeline that would have been affected by that. So that was just one little story around that. But what came out of it was, which was even more important, is they got better machines. So we ended up getting better results in terms of the product. They added a better QC team to adhere to better guidelines, and their capacity got better. So we were like, okay, we'll accept the price increase, but the win for us is we got better product. Our product is going to ship on time to our customers, and it's going to ship correctly.
I'm really curious, and it's not a question I've had an opportunity to ask you, is leveraging, an audit process like SWOT and applying that and offering up that as a solution to the owner in response to, what felt like an out of the blue knee-jerk price increase. How was that initially received by the decorator? And now, as you look back on that, what has been the impact of using that type of an analysis, something so simple that we all of us know what that is.
I think we tend to think to use the SWOT internally in our business. And so in using it with a key partner like that, and I've also done it with one of our key manufacturing partners overseas, I think in the day-to-day, it's hard to maybe really get information around what's happening. And I think giving people permission to share in a SWOT, which I think helps distill information in a sense. Another thing I've done I've obviously at Sportiq, but I've also done it with consultants and other partners, is a start, stop, continue. And that's a great way to get feedback between two parties. Is what are things that we should start doing, what are things we should stop doing, and what are things that we should continue to do. And through that feedback, it helps elicit how to get better. So, and this speaks to one of Sportiq's values is around evolve, which is really having a growth and learning mindset. And how are we getting better at least 1% every day? And so without getting feedback from our partners, it's hard. So again, I had to trust that owner that our values were aligned. I knew they were aligned. And just having to just communicate, okay, ultimately what's best for you is going to be what's best for me, and vice versa. So let's figure out how to get what you want, but then also get what we want to continue the path moving forward.
Did it immediately occur to you to take that conversation out of an owner to owner relationship and to expand it to what sounds like, if I heard the story correctly, you brought in some of your, key members of your team that were going to be impacted by this, as well as the other owner brought members of his or her team, so that more voices were being heard and maybe surfaced, challenges, strengths, opportunities that may have been out of sight for you and the other owner, because you're obviously not going to be involved in perhaps in deep of the weeds as other members of the team. How important is
So,
that?
so Brian, it's very astute on your point. We haven't even talked about this, so I'm glad you picked up on that. It would never have worked if the other folks were not in that meeting, because it was their voices that ultimately needed to be heard, because they weren't maybe being heard properly, especially on our partners, on our partner side. And so to create an environment where there was trust already, because we had been working together for 8 years, but to really let their voices be heard. So it really only worked because the people who are really doing the work day to day, their voice got to be heard the most.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's all. Thanks for sharing that extra point. I think it is a key one. Another story that you shared with me that involves a different group of stakeholders, your original investors, those that put their support in you and Jason to help launch Sportiq. And at a point along the journey, I think this was a handful of years ago, forgive me, I don't remember the exact month and year, but I'm sure you do, that you had to make the decision that alignment that you spoke about as one of your 6 key principles around the stakeholder orientation mindset, that you were clearly picking up a feeling of a lack of alignment in their vision and your vision of where Sportiq is headed. And maybe you can share a little bit more about when that recognition began, and then the steps that you took to create a win-win that allowed your investors to recoup what mattered most to them and allowed you to carry forward with the vision that you and Jason have for Sportiq.
Yeah. This one really speaks to alignment. And I would first say that without those original investors, I mean, Sportiq would not have gotten off the ground. So they served an extreme valuable purpose, from day one. And so the capital was really important. And then a lot of the guidance, especially in the first 5-6 years, their guidance was really important in what I would say helping navigate potholes. I think every startup, especially if you're starting from scratch like we did. I started out of my condo, and Jason, my business partner, was in his apartment, and so growing, scaling, and moving forward at a clip that we wanted to move forward, like having the investors and having those partners who had already a good business background and business discipline to help us navigate potholes and actually make that pathway to success, greater than if we didn't have them, right? So probably after 6-7 years, where now we've matured as a company, but also matured as business owners, and seeing the vision of where Sportiq can go, and where the original owner's vision was, there was now misalignment, so to speak. And so it was actually a really critical point in the business, because we were now seeing some real success, and there's some real profit now that's happening. And so, and they had invested their time and resources to get to see this point, but getting to the next level, that was going to be a challenge. And so fortunately it took about a year. It took about a good year of a lot of back and forth conversations around how to transition. and that started with, just first looking at valuation and what would be a proper return. But I would also say they were also of the mindset to help Sportiq to get from A to B to C and have an exit. And so we hit that critical point. I think the thing was, they had a group of people. There was me and Jason, but we kind of really looked at, okay, what is best. Jason and I were looking at what's best for the company, what's best for ourselves. They were looking at what's best for the company, what's best for themselves. When we found that common ground and what's best for the company, it worked.
Was any nuggets of wisdom that you and Jason and the investors used to find that common ground? Was it just the spirit of transparency and openness? Were there some, perhaps, for lack of a better way to say it, games being played on either side to maybe hold cards close to the vest? Just curious if you can shed any light on how you were able to find the Venn diagram overlap where everybody walked away with a win.
Yeah, I mean, I think just really getting to a fair valuation of where the business was and where it was trending. But I would say there were points in time where I felt like, and I haven't really said this publicly, that if this wasn't going to work, Jason and I don't know if we could actually continue to carry on, because the misalignment in the vision was evident.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so then when you look, okay, well, what's best for the company? And so, and if it's good for the company, then that's how they're going to get their return.
Yep. Makes sense. Let's talk about a customer example, because I know there's a recent one that I just think speaks to the spirit of Sportiq and the values that guide the organization, and that is the quality control issue that popped up with the recent launch of the sandalwood hoodies, and the steps that you took to really get out in front of it. That I think is an excellent example of recognizing the value of long-term relationships. One of the other 6 elements that you referred to as you think about stakeholder orientation as a mindset. Share that story with the group.
Sure. So I will also I just want to make a point, though, as I tell this story, though. The response was really based off of our values. So I think it's really important for companies to really be rooted in their values. And it's not just, words on a wall or on a piece of paper, that there's behaviors and there's behind it, and decisions that are used around those values. So one of our values is integrity, and built into that value of integrity is, our comfort guarantee. We guarantee, and we stand behind our product. And also in our value of integrity is creating win-win scenarios with our stakeholders and really having a healthy ecosystem. And so we introduced a new seasonal color in the fall. The color's name was sandalwood, for one of our most popular hoodies, the Olsen. And we learned there was a defect in the fabric. And so on Black Friday, we had sold over 200 units of that style, and that following week we found there was this defect in the fabric. Now, it could have been all 200, it could have just been maybe one, but we knew we had a sample set of at least 4 that had it. And so we were just proactive. We sent an email to every person that ordered that, and was just really transparent in telling them, one, about our comfort guarantee, that we stand behind our product. We've learned of this issue with this fabric. We don't know if it happened to you, but we're going to credit you for that hoodie, and you be able to use this credit for a future purchase or something, or exchange it or purchase at Sportiq. And so what came out of it was, which was something I wasn't expecting, is comments like, thank you, I didn't notice it. But wow, this is amazing customer service too. Yeah, I did notice there's an issue. Thank you, for this. I'm going to be a customer, for life. And so, in doing it, we were honoring our value of comfort guarantee, but we were being transparent. We were looking to help that customer win, especially if they did get something in it and there was an issue with it. And then looking long term, that we do want this customer to be able to stay connected with us.
It's something that has just occurred to me through the course of our conversation
and
today.
It's not fun to have to tell you, hey, we made a mistake.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you, but I know you'll knock it out of the park. Something had occurred to me as we've been talking about the stakeholder ecosystem, and you shared an example of supply chain example. You shared an example with the original investors. You shared an example with a customer. Undoubtedly, there are employee examples, environmental examples. I know we can come up with story after story, but knowing you for as long as I have, something has occurred to me in the stakeholder model that I think you've really zeroed in on, and that's looking at yourself as a stakeholder and ensuring that you are paying attention to your own needs, your own growth, your own development, your own sense of staying connected to your humanity, and making sure that how you spend your time and your energy is making a contribution that is enriching for yourself. And I'm wondering if you can just speak to how you stay connected, how you stay fresh, how you stay as an integral part of the stakeholder ecosystem of Sportiq, besides the obvious of being, the co-founder and CEO. But what are the other things that you do to take care of yourself and your own needs throughout, this journey that you've been on?
Sure. So I said earlier, all the tenants, they have to be working in tandem in some shape or form. So now what you're talking about almost goes into conscious leadership in some shape or form. But for me, it's what's the experience that I want in this lifetime? I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled. I want to be doing things that I'm passionate about, and working with people that have an interest in growing as a person and then professionally. And so for me, it's I go to the experience, and it's really that experience is in a feeling. So it's not about, okay, I just generated this much in sales, but man, I am so unhappy. I don't even feel great about, that happened. And it's really about, so for me, self-care is really important. So for me, it starts with the connection to self, to who I am, what my purpose is for being here. What is it that I want to get out of being here? So that really starts with, having my heart full, and so one of the practices that I have on a daily basis is a form of meditation that I have been practicing now for 20 years. So yeah, because I again, it's human beings that are driving everything, making the decisions. And so for me to be the best version of me, it's also how am I making the best decisions for me, for my family, for the business, for our stakeholders. And the biggest stakeholders is the team, is the employees, and how to help them evolve in what they're doing in their life. I know, Brian, you and I have talked about this, is that, we spend, most of our time at work. So me knowing that, how can I create an environment that helps people evolve, because this is where they're spending most of their time, evolving as a person, and then obviously evolving professionally. And then in doing so, if they're aligned with the vision of the company, they're going to be creating some really cool things and doing some great things for the business.
Love it. Love it. Well, I can see the Q&A is starting to fill up, and Lord knows that I can continue to get after it with questions. But Alexander, I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend, and manage the Q&A here, sir.
Thank you both for this incredible conversation. And we do have a number of questions coming in already. So let's start with Bernard's question. Can you share a little bit more about the 6 key principles of a stakeholder mindset?
Well, I mentioned win-win, having a partnership mentality, being transparent. And so like, I'll just transparency with our team. I think it's important for the team to know, where does the company stand? And so we've developed a habit of quarterly sharing financial information with our key stakeholders, employees, so they know where we stand. So honestly, in a COVID situation, when COVID hit, it wasn't fun sharing that information, but also them seeing that information helped understood why we were making certain decisions, whether it was with staff or budget cuts and things of that nature. And so I think transparency is important. Just having a mindset of just creating value. How am I creating value for who I'm working with? And again, thinking long term. And alignment. And I think alignment, again, this is tricky because you have to know who you are. You have to, what are your values? What are the company's values? And that when you are going to look to connect with somebody, whether it's hiring somebody, will they align with your values and the culture? We can get into a whole thing around that, where if you're hiring for skill set and missing on culture, you could have some toxicity in the culture, of operating, your business. I think the biggest thing for me is just at the end of the day, and I did a values presentation to our production staff two weeks ago, and these are people who are running our presses, handling finishing, working in our warehouse, and one of our values is respect. And treating people as you would want to be treated. And we have up in our office, we have a sign that says Gen Shy, and it means not to treat someone as if they're small. And so really the way I distill that is, we're all human beings. I'm a human being, you're a human being, first and foremost. Let's start from that playing field and let's talk from that space and address whatever it is, not Matt's CEO and your blah, blah, blah. It's human being first. And I think that's a mindset that I think would be very helpful for a lot of us to all adopt, which really would change the equation of how we would connect with people in a situation. I hope that helped.
I think so. Thank you. And then this next question dives into one of those principles more. I'd love for both of you to answer this. Eric is asking, how do you go about elevating the conversation to both win or win-win while avoiding finger pointing?
Well, I think one of the things, and this is hard, it's a skill that you got to practice, I think, is empathy. And so part of empathy is putting yourself in the other person's shoes and understanding, like, what is their viewpoint, right? So if I'm looking at a supply chain partner or something of that nature, or even a customer, right? If there's a negotiation on price or something on a project, ultimately the other party, if this is business to business, what is their goal? Their goal is to generate revenue and have a profit, and that's my goal too. And so how can we both get there, right? Because if if I'm winning and my supply chain partner is running a deficit business, they are not going to be able to supply me properly. They're not going to be able to give me good quality and service. And if it's just going to be about price, it's going to get diluted and watered down to some degree, right? We work a lot in business to business. So what are the understanding the pain points of our customer? How can we then solve what those are and create the win for them, right? And obviously the win for us is they're doing business with us. And if they're properly aligned in terms of wanting our product and aligned with how we can work together, then it's great.
I'll just add to that my 2 cents. Thinking about the finger pointing, I think finger pointing happens when there's an absence of a particular type of trust that I think is probably most commonly referred to as a benevolence-based trust. You have competency-based trust. Can you trust your supplier? Can you trust your teammate? Can you trust the vendor that you're working with for them to deliver what it is that they're there to do? And mistakes can be made, and you can forgive mistakes that are made from a competency standpoint. But I think what so many of us likely deem unforgivable is when that benevolence-based trust isn't there, meaning that their intentions aren't good, that they're coming from a place to create perhaps a zero sum in order for them to win. I need to lose. And that's where I think finger pointing starts to come into play. It's not that the competency isn't there. It's that level of good intent is missing. So really sussing that out, and that's where I think, to Matt's point around getting alignment in values and ensuring that the people that we are going to surround ourselves with have that openness to establishing a benevolence-based trust factor in addition to the competency-based trust.
If I can dovetail on what Brian said, Brian, you hit a key word that I think tends to get overlooked, and that's trust. And when we talk about human to human relations and working together, synergistically and harmoniously, trust has to be that ingredient, right? And you can't put a finger on it either. And one of our values around teamwork is trust. And there's a couple ways that happens. One, just give it. And that's kind of the philosophy that I've adopted is I'm going to give trust until something shows me otherwise, right? And so the way then trust continues to be built is just delivering on that promise, delivering on your word. If you're going to, say you're going to do X and you do it, you've now deposited, trust in that relationship. And I think one of the big things that helped us through COVID is, working with partners and telling them we were going to do X and then doing X consistently, week in, week out, month to month. And we had already been doing that before. So when it came to asking for some help, the trust was already there.
That's so helpful. Thank you. And Constantine has a follow-up question about, are there any approaches or processes to proactively involve stakeholders as you think through these things? Maybe some examples would be having them meet once a year on a topic of joint interest, inviting them into your leadership trainings or strategic planning. Is there anything that you've done that does include your stakeholders in this?
I gave the example around the SWOT analysis. I think that's the start, stop, continue, and the SWOT analysis are great things to do within large groups, or if you've got supply chain partners or vendors or consultants. I think that's a good exercise to get feedback. I'm going to tell you one stakeholder that maybe you guys don't think is a stakeholder is your financial, also institution partners. So I will actively communicate with our bank and our banking partners on what's happening in the business, let them know on vision and strategy, and really look at them as a partner, because I feel they are. And so I think that's the banking relationship is, I think, a very important one. And if you can look at them as a key stakeholder and utilize those keys that I had mentioned around looking at them as a partner, having transparency, because they already can see into things in your business already. Like there shouldn't be anything to hide, with your bank, and so that's where things can get sideways. So I think transparency is key, and again, thinking long term.
Brian, anything else you want to add?
No, we'll leave the spotlight on Matt on that one.
Thank you. So Eric is wondering, how are you approaching leadership succession at Sportiq as you seek to sustain alignment with the 4 tenets and keep this culture in the company?
Great question. So Brian mentioned, we're 15 years in. I feel like we're just getting warmed up, to be honest, in terms of achieving the vision and the goals that we want to strive for. I think it's, again, one of our values is evolve. How are we getting better at 1%? So how am I adopting that for myself? How is the leadership team and the exec team adopting that as well? And then as we look to scale, how are we getting better? How are we improving our processes, our efficiency, reducing waste around it? And I think that requires all of us to have a professional development mindset as well. And so I foresee being around for a while to be able to take that question and really put it into better action around how our exec team continues to be able to grow.
And we're getting near the end here, so we'll only have an opportunity for 1 or 2 more questions. But another Eric is wondering if you consider the environment to be a stakeholder.
Yeah, of course. And so when I look at environment, so we'll do it's our partners operating in an eco-friendly manner. I will also tell you the production facility we built here in Phoenix, Arizona is a fully state-of-the-art. It's the first facility where we have eco-friendly machines and products that are involved. So yeah, I think environment is important. And then the other thing is social impact. So I don't want to forget that. What are we doing from a social impact standpoint? So, Jason and I, our mission is to help people feel comfortable. So from a social impact standpoint, we really look to address how to help kids in crisis and align ourselves with with nonprofits and entities that are doing work in that space. And so it's whether we're donating product or resources. We did a lot during COVID, and where we did a Together We Win campaign, where we did a t-shirt where all the proceeds went to frontline COVID relief efforts. We pivoted to making face masks during COVID, and 10% of those sales go to COVID relief efforts. So I think also environment is important, but then also the social impact. And I think you got to look at both of those too.
That's such an important clarification. Thank you. And the last question that we have today is from Moyne, who says that innovation and creativity demand a certain degree of counter-cultural thinking, sometimes counter-company thinking, which may require an individual to fit out. How does that fit in with this stakeholder orientation mindset?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I wonder if it's a broader question of how a stakeholder orientation mindset fits in with also wanting to have an innovative and creative culture in a company that may seem to run counter to what you normally believe.
I don't think one should have to do with the other. I mean, I think first, get your house in order. What is it that you want your culture to be? Understand what your values are. And then from there, how are you applying stakeholder integration? Because look, if you have a very innovative, cool culture, and you're contracting to work with, another company or a consultant who's very stale and rigid, that's not a fit. It's not alignment. You're not, the decision making, how you guys work together, it's just not going to feel good even. So I think understanding, who you are is really important as a leader, as a company, with your values and how those can be then tied into, that ecosystem, because I think like attracts like. So if you know who you are, then you can be able to project and attract the right people to then come play with you.
Well, Matt and Brian, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and sharing this with the Conscious Capitalism community today. I know I really appreciate it, and I know others who are listening in do as well. And so we'll wrap today up by letting everyone else who's participating say, no, we appreciate you joining us. We have a quick survey that Michael Higgs just posted in the chat box. If you could fill out for us, will help us keep getting better at putting on more gatherings like this. That'll help you out. And look out for information on next week's virtual gathering and the rest coming up in Q1 shortly. With that, again, Matt and Brian, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, everyone, for participating and attending today.